Hi, and welcome to Lion and Lamb TV. We now begin our series, a brand new series, on the blessed hope of the child of God. Speaking of the rapture, as we await the shout, tonight is part 1 in our 12-part series. We hope you enjoy it.
No. See, my favorite one, the one I love the best, is how you honestly believe that God is just going to come back and just take all the Christians and just whoosh them all to heaven. Just like that. I mean, right out of their clothes. Yeah, okay. I can just see that. Oh, and one more thing.
Tonight begins our 12-part series on the rapture, the blessed hope of the child of God. Now, before we get started, and you're also going to find at the beginning of each part of this 12-part series, I'm going to make this statement. We believe here at the Lion and Lamb Ministry that Jesus Christ is going to return in the clouds for his church before the tribulation that is coming on the whole earth, and that he will return with his saints and all his holy angels to the earth at the end of the tribulation and set up his kingdom on earth, ruling and reigning forever and ever. And that kingdom on earth will initially be for 1,000 years, just like it says in the book of Revelation. That's what we believe. After that, the judgment, and then on to eternity. We also believe that the nation of Israel has a special place in God's plan, and that all of the promises of God to Israel will be fulfilled. All right, with that said, in this series, we are going to take a look at portions of 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. You see, Paul had visited Thessalonica when he first arrived in Europe. He was there for 3 Sabbaths, possibly only 2 weeks between 3 Saturdays. Oh, by the way, what's going on behind me is the continuous journey of those that are raptured heading on up to heaven. I thought it was a neat idea. Anyway, you see, Paul was there in Thessalonica for 3 Sabbaths, possibly only 2 weeks between 3 Saturdays. While he was there was a riot, a church was established, and many people were saved, both Greeks and Jews. Paul had to escape in the middle of the night and go on to Berea, then on to Athens and Corinth. 1 year later, there was a great persecution. The first persecution, as we know from secular history, came from the Roman forces, the Roman Empire. Well, Paul was greatly disturbed. Those young Christians were under attack, and some of them suffering and dying. He longed to go see them, and as the end of chapter 2 of 1 Thessalonians tells us, he had tried twice to come, but Satan hindered him. So he said, as we can see in chapter 3, here's what he says, "Wherefore, when we could no longer contain ourselves, when we could no longer keep the roof on, we sent Timothy." Now, Timothy brought back the wonderful word that they were doing fine. Now, in chapter 4, which we consider in this present study, there are 3 questions. The first has to do with the private moral lives of the Thessalonians. The second with their everyday living in love toward each other and those without. And the third with the questions they had asked through Timothy concerning the second coming of Christ. So chapter 4 begins, "We beseech you, brethren, and exhort you by the Lord Jesus, that as you have received of us how you ought to walk and to please God, so you would abound more and more." We find that in verse 1. Now you will notice in several of Paul's epistles the same thought is repeated, such as in Romans 12. He says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And here, I beseech you, brethren, and exhort you by the Lord Jesus, how ye ought to walk. This means that once a person has trusted in the Lord Jesus Christ, his daily life ought to be well-pleasing to God. Then Paul says, in verse 2, you know what commandments we gave you by the Lord Jesus. He told them certain ways that they should live and that Christ should control them. Undoubtedly, we can deduce from all of the epistles that he taught them commandments not in the sense of thou shalt and thou shalt not, but that in the whole sphere of the Christian life and living, God was to be exalted in everything they did, as we can read in 1 Corinthians 10:31. Why don't we turn there? 1 Corinthians 10:31. Here's what it says. Whether therefore ye eat or drink or whatsoever ye do, do all to the glory of God. So he says in verse 3, this is the will of God, even your sanctification. And that's the end of part 1. Isn't that wonderful? Well, we're going to continue in this. Remember, we're covering a lot of ground here and leading up to why we believe in the rapture and what exactly the rapture is. The blessed hope of the child of God. All right, we'll see you next time.
When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation,